fashion lovers, welcome again to another interesting video tutorial. In case you are new here, my name is Gift. In today's video I'll be showing us how to draft this more clover lapel dress. Actually, this is a picture of a jacket, but in today's tutorial I'll be teaching us how to draft that particular color and this dress. If this is something you like to know, then let's go straight into today's video. So here on the table I have my pattern all laid out. I've already gone ahead to draft my basic dress bodice. Basic dress. So this is a more clover lapel dress tutorial. So here on the table I have my basic dress pattern. I've already drafted that out, and this part is going to serve as my center front while the other side is going to serve as my back. Okay, so here is a box, and I expect that every one of us should be able to draft a basic dress, but for the sake of the beginners here, I will just be explaining what I have here. So on the upper part of this box I have about 4 inches. I left about 4 inches allowance there, while on this part facing me, which is the front part, I left about 5 inches allowance. Now the 4 inches allowance at the top is going to help for the collar, why this other part is going to serve for the lapel and button allowance. So the first thing I did was to go ahead and rule out a straight line, which is going to be my starting point before marking out the necessary measurements. So here is a box, and how did I get this box? This box was gotten by dividing my hip measurements into 2. So you want to go ahead and divide your hip measurements by 2. Okay, the hip I'm working with is 40 inches. 40 divided by 2 gave me 20 inches, and that is the width of that box. Then I went ahead to divide that box again into another 2 to give me a quarter scale of what I will be needing. So here are the required measurements. You need your shoulder measurement, front length, back length, and all. Okay, so for the sake of the beginners here, I will just be explaining the markings I have here. So I'm making use of a 3x3 neckline and neck width, which is a basic neckline and neck width and neck depth. So it's a basic neckline, and here I have my chest line, which is about 8.25. I have my shoulder to bust point, which is 9 inches, shoulder to under bust, which is 13 inches, and shoulder to front length, which is 15 inches, and shoulder to my hip line, which is 22 inches. So if you do not know how to take accurate body measurement, I will leave the link to the video on how to take an accurate body measurement in the description box. So I also went ahead to impute all those measurements I listed there, and like I said, I divided my shoulder measurement into 2. The shoulder I'm working with is 14 inches divided by 2, which is 7. And my shoulder slope is 1 inch. So I'm making use of 1 inch shoulder slope for both the front and the back. And the neck width again for the front is 3 inches by 3 inches. That is 3 inches neck width and neck depth. While for the back, I'm making use of a 3 inches neck width and a 1 inch neck depth. Okay, so the difference between the front and back neck depth is actually 2 inches. Okay, so here I have my shoulder slope, which is 1 inch for both the front and the back. Now I'm going to be explaining how to get your armhole curve. You want to impute your bust measurement divided by 4. Okay, whatever it is you got as your bust measurement divided by 4, impute that and add about half of an inch for ease. Now you don't want this to be too tight, so I added half inch for ease. Okay, and then I'm going to be dividing what I have from my shoulder slope to my chest line into 2. Now this is for me to be able to get my armhole depth. So from that point I came in for by 0.5 inch now for the front armhole depth. Now this is how you get your front armhole depth. Divide what you have on your shoulder slope to chest line by 2, go in from that point by 0.5. Why for the back excuse me, why for the back, you want to divide what you have from your shoulder slope to your chest line by 2. Divide what you have there by 2. Okay, and then mark that point, and then connect from that point to meet up with your bust measurement, which you already have on your chest line. Now take note of the difference between the armhole depth for both the front and back. There is a difference. Okay, now when you are done doing that, you want to impute your bust measurement. Like I said, your bust measurement divided by 4 plus half of an inch is allowance for both front and back. Now, after getting that, the next thing I did was to impute my bust point, my shoulder to under bust, my front length measurement. So on my front length measurement, which is the waistline, I imputed my waist measurement divided by 4, which is 7 inches. Okay, the waist measurement I'm working with is 7 inches. Then I added 1 inch allowance to that. Now the 1 inch I added was for me to have to make it a bit free. I do not want this dress to be tight at all. On my hip line, I imputed my hip measurement divided by 4, and then I added another half inch on all the measurements. So now you're going to repeat the same thing for the front part as well, I mean the back part as well. So now on my center back line, as you can see, I came in by half of an inch. Now this is to eliminate any bulge on the center back line. Okay, so I came in from that point by half of an inch like so, and then connected that point to meet up with my neckline. Okay, just connect it with a slant line to meet up with your neckline. By the time you do this, you're going to eliminate any bulge around that area. And from that point as well, connect a curve to meet up with your hip line, just to give you that hip line shape. Okay, cool. Now, when I was done doing this, I just went ahead to make those lines bolder for us to see. Can you see? So I'm just pointing out those parts just for us to understand. So I'll go in now with my marker pen just to connect those lines together and to make those lines bolder for us to see. Okay, now that I'm done doing this, the next thing I'm going to do now is to just go in like so and connect. Guys, make sure you don't use sharp lines. Okay, make sure there is a smooth transition between your lines. Okay, cool. Now the next thing I'll do is just to go in like so and also connect my chest line measurement to meet up with my waistline measurement for the back. Okay, now the next thing I will do now is to impute my bust span measurement. The bust span I'm working with is 8 inches divided by 2, which is 4 inches. So I just marked that line all the way from my bust points down to the hem of this dress. Now if you're making a jacket, this is also the same technique you will use. I already have a video on the channel on how to make a jacket, but the icing on the cake for this tutorial is actually the more clover lapel that we want to draft. Okay, now on my waistline, the dart intake I'm using is actually um 1.5 inches, 1 inch rather. So I imputed half of an inch on both sides of the dart like so, and then on my hip line I will go up by 2 inches. Now this is because I do not want the dart to get to my hip line. Guys, do not let your dart get to your hip line. Okay, so now I'm just going to connect those points together. I'm going to connect my bust point to meet up with the first dart leg like so, and then I'll connect the other dart leg to meet up with my bust point just like so, and then I will also connect these two dart legs to meet up with this point which I have marked on my hip line just like so. Okay, now for the back side, for you to get your dart leg, you're going to divide what you have on your waist measurement into 2. Okay, divide what you have on your waist measurement into 2, and then connect the lines like so from your chest line all the way to the hem of the dress. Now from the chest line, you'll come down by 1 inch. Yes, you do not want your dart to get to your chest line. Okay, you remember we didn't allow our dart to get to the hip line on the front pattern. Okay, so now what I'll do is to take my dart intake. Remember the dart intake we used for the front was 1 inch. Okay, so I'm just cross checking to be sure that I have an accurate measurement there. So from my chest line I will come down by 1 inch. Do not let your dart get to your chest line, guys, please. So on my waistline I'll mark half of an inch on both sides of the dart like so, and then I'm going to go ahead and connect those lines. Then on my hip line as well, I'm going to go up by 2 inches, just the same way we did for the front part. So you want to go up from your hip line by 2 inches, okay? Do not let your dart get to the hip line. Next, I'm going to connect those 4 points like so, just to form my dart, okay? Just to form my dart. So you want to repeat this same process for yours, okay? Make sure they are meeting up and then connect them together like so to meet up on the hip line, guys. So now when I was done doing this, the next thing you want to do, of course, is to cut through this midpoint. I'm going to be cutting through this midpoint just for us to concentrate on the front part. Remember, the whole tutorial for this, the whole lesson for this tutorial is actually on the front part. So now I've gone ahead to split that paper into two. I slashed the paper into two rather, and now I'll be concentrating on the front part. Now the front parts here, I have the starting point, which is the center line. Remember I said I left about 5 inches on that part. So the first thing I'm going to be marking is my button allowance. So I'm just zooming in just so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to be imputing my button allowance. The button allowance I'm making use of here is 1.5 inches. You can make use of 1 inch, okay? So I'm going to mark out the 1.5 inches from the top of this pattern all the way to the hem of this dress, okay, to the hem of the dress, and then I'm going to label that as my button allowance, okay. Now the next thing you want to do is to determine your break point, okay. You want to determine your break point, which is where your button is going to start from. That is if you're adding a button. So the break point I'm making use of is actually 1 inch from my front length. Your break point could be 2 inches below your underbust or 1 inch below your front length, okay. It can also be your front length measurement. So I'm going to label that as my break point, okay. Now after you've gotten your break point, the next thing you want to do is to connect your break point to meet up with your neck width using a slant line, okay. You want to connect it to meet up with your neck width, but I'm going to be going in from my neck width by 0.5. Now guys, this is optional, okay. This is optional, you don't have to do it, but for me, I just did it just for me to have some kind of ease around my neckline. Next, I'm going to connect that point like so to meet up with that 1/2 inch I went in by. Now, after you've gotten that, the next thing you want to do is to come down from your neck depth by 2 inches, okay? Now, remember, it is time to draft our more clover um, lapel collar. So, from that 2 inches you came down by, is 2 inches, okay. From that 2 inches, you're going to draw a slant line. Guys, it is not a straight line, it is a slanted line, okay, not a straight line. So you're going to connect it with a slant line to meet up with this line which you drew from your neck width like so, okay. And then you're gonna bring that line out like so. Now from that point, which is your center front line, you want to determine how wide you want your lapel to be, okay. It could be 3 inches, it could be 3.5, it could be 4. It's totally dependent on you. For me, I want mine to be 3.5 inches, okay. So now that I've gotten that, I'm just going to connect that point to meet up with my break point by using a curved ruler. You want to use a curve, okay? Connect it to the curve to meet up with your break point, like so. So now we have labeled our lapel. The next thing we're going to be doing is to extend this line by the amount of neck width you have for your back. So I'm just bringing in the back pattern just to measure around that area. Remember, we made use of 3 inches neck width. So I'm just going to be extending this line by that same 3 inches, okay. So I'll be extending the line by another 3 inches, which is the neck width for the back, okay. Now from that point, that is from that 3 inches point, I'm going to connect that point to meet up with this other line using a slanted line like so, okay. Now after you have connected that point, you go in like so by half of an inch. Go in by half of an inch. Can you see? Now connect that half of an inch with a curve to meet up with your neck width. Now if you've seen my previous video on how to draft a jacket, you will understand this part better. So the reason why you're connecting this half of an inch is just so that your back can sit properly. The back collar can sit properly on your neckline, okay? You don't want it to gape. So after you've connected this half of an inch line, the next thing you do is to connect from that point to determine how wide you want your collar to be. I want mine to be 3.5 inches wide. So from this half of an inch that we went in by, I'm just going to be connecting that point, okay? I'm going to be connecting that point. So the 3.5 inches is actually from this half of an inch line, okay? Not the initial line. So I'm going to be connecting it to a diagonal line like so, 45-degree line, okay? And then I'll connect it together like so. That is after you have determined your collar width, okay? Remember guys, this is not a straight line. It is a slanted line. It is a diagonal line. So connect it like so, and then from that point, from this 2 inches line we marked earlier, I will just go in. Yes, now from the point of that curve, from the end point of that curve, I will go in by 2 inches. Yes, I'm going to go in from that point by 2 inches. Okay, now this is because we want to determine the peak. Yes, we call it the peak. So and then from that 2 inches I went in by, I will go up by 1 inch. Okay, I will go up by 1 inch. And now if you pay attention to all this measurement, you discover it's very easy. First, I went in by 2 inches from that point. And then from that point where I went in by 2 inches, I came up by 1 inch. Now, I'm going to be connecting this 1 inch line to meet up with my collar width using a curve, okay? Just watch me as I do this. So I'm going to bring in my curved ruler like so, and then connect those points together with a curved line, okay? With a curve. Connect it together like so with a curve, okay? Cool. So now you have your collar, and then the lower part is your lapel. And guys, that's basically all for this. That's basically all for this tutorial. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to measure what I have from that point of my shoulder, that is my neck width, to my shoulder tip. I'm going to measure what I have there, and then I'm going to divide whatever it is I got by 2, okay? I'll divide it into 2, and then I'm going to connect that to meet up with my bust point. Now this is because I want my dress to have a shoulder dart. If you do not want a shoulder dart, you can use the Armhole princess dart style line for yours. So now guys, that is basically all for this tutorial. The next I will do is just to slash through the dart line like so. Can you see? I'm going to be slashing through this dart line like so. Please watch where I'm cutting, okay? Watch the part I'm cutting. Now, guys, you can decide to leave your collar this way, the collar and lapel intact. You could decide to leave it intact, but for me, I'm just going to be cutting through because I want to join them later on. So like I said, you can leave it intact. You just cut everything together on your fabric. Now watch where I'm cutting, guys. Just watch where I'm cutting. So here I have my collar, and now it's time to cut my lapel. And this is it. Can you see our pattern is set? So here is the front pattern. I have my collar set. So by the time I sew that in and then turn it over, this is what it's going to look like. And the collar is going to stay at the top like so, okay? It's going to stay at the top like so. So I will just take this away now, and then I'll bring in the back pattern because I also need to slash through the back patterns. So just like we did for the front patterns, just divide what you have there into 2 and then connect that point to meet up with your chest line now, okay? To meet up with your chest line, and there you have your pattern all set, okay? So guys, I'm going to slash through this, and this is basically all for this tutorial, and I hope you actually found this tutorial helpful. So in my next video, I'll be showing us how to add seam allowances. I'll just be adding half-inch seam allowance round, except for the side, front and side back, which will be having 1 inch seam allowance. The armhole area too, we have half of an inch seam allowance. I hope you found this video helpful, guys. Please, if you do, give this video a thumbs up, okay? Please like it to encourage us, subscribe, comment, and also turn on your notification bell so you can always get notified whenever we post a new video. Guys, I really enjoyed making or drafting this with you, and I hope you also enjoyed it too. So in my next video, I'll be showing us how to join these patterns together. Thank you so much for tuning in, and also remain blessed. Till we meet again, I am Gift, and please tell others about our channel. So on our collar too, I'll be adding half of an inch seam allowance round. So guys, thank you so much for tuning in again. I love you, and please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Till we meet again, I'm Gift.